Round 8 of the A-League men's competition is here. We're kicking things off on the Central Coast. It is, yes, in Gosford against, the Mariners against Adelaide United. The Reds, we are highlighting this game as our marquee fixture of the round. Of course, we've had a lot of derbies and stuff front-loaded in, Jacob Stevens and Paletti, but this is a weekend without that. So Central Coast and Adelaide have always kind of had this reputation of being these really good development clubs. The Central Coast Mariners not had the hottest starts, but Adelaide, Jacob, somehow, despite maybe some of their performances in the opposite vein, have ended up undefeated after 7 rounds. What do you make of this clash?
It's one of those ones where it's these two sides that are sort of going to, by the end of the season, start to really converge and be fighting for the same sort of positions on the table. And I think that it's one where whoever comes out on top, if somebody comes out on top in this game, will look back on this and go, this was the one where we were able to get the edge over them come the end of the season, get those 3 points and finish above them, secure finals, whatever it might be. Two sides who, like you said, Lockie, have had completely different starts to the season. The Mariners doing Mariners things and being a bit slow. Adelaide come out the gates firing, undefeated, somehow managing to scrape their way to results. They, haven't looked fantastic in some of the games, but still, they managed to get a draw against Perth, even though they looked completely out of it at one point and it looked like Perth were going to go on and win it. They managed to hold on with 10 men against the Jets. The Mariners, I mentioned in the podcast, Mark Jackson has done a really good job of keeping them focused on making sure that they're also grinding out results. It's not been the results that they've wanted necessarily, but it means that they're not in a position where they are right at the bottom of the table and having to fight back a huge way. And they've started to put a couple of wins together here in a row. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. The weather, I think, affected the Mariners Sydney game in the last round a little bit. Obviously, the pitch was just completely almost waterlogged. You saw Quo try a knee slide to celebrate.
Yeah.
I think it was his first goal, and he left a trench that would have put the Somme to shame. So, it was not in the best of conditions. Hopefully the weather's a little bit more agreeable for this one because I could see it being a really entertaining game. Simply for the sake of my prediction, I'm going to give the edge to Adelaide in this one. I think that the goal scoring prowess of the Adelaide front line. They've scored a lot of goals. The last game against the Jets, they sort of struggled a little bit, but I think perhaps a blip on the radar when you've got the likes of Stephen Walk and Zach Clough as two midfielders who can score goals. You've got Ayubi, obviously, who's shown in the Cup. He's an incredible goal scorer. And you've got Luka Jovanovic and Archie Goodwin as your two strikers, two really young, talented players up front. I don't see that being an issue. The issue is going to be defensively, and I don't think the Mariners have been firing on all cylinders in their attack. So I do give the edge to Adelaide. And as I said, it is for the sake of my prediction. So I'm just going to get it in now early.
Okay.
Part of it does involve this, and it's that Adelaide will remain undefeated by the end of the round, and there will be 2 games with at least 4 goals.
2 games with at least 4 goals. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it's a combo. It's a combo thing. I don't make a habit of doing these sorts of predictions. I like to make really high bar one shot things, or a simpler one on just one game. But I thought, I'm going to give it a try and see if it works. It's probably going to blow up in my face, but you live and you learn.
Fair enough. I think the interesting thing about this game for me is you've got Adelaide who have scored a lot of goals and conceded a lot of goals, and you've got the Mariners who haven't scored a lot of goals, but actually haven't conceded a lot of goals either. The only time they've conceded more than 1 goal in a match was the 3-0 game against Wellington. Apart from that, they haven't conceded more than 1. And Adelaide have conceded more than 1 a few times despite their undefeated record. So I have this pegged as a 1-1 draw, somewhere in the middle. Mariners are 2 wins in a row in the A-League. Maybe they're bringing a little bit of form. That is actually a better form record than Adelaide United in the past 2 rounds. So this A-League is crazy. Anything can happen. If I had to give a slight edge, I'd say the Mariners, but I think the draw is the more likely. Well, maybe not the more likely, but that's my tip.
It's a safe bet.
What do you say? Yeah.
For me, I think a draw. I think that, sort of these two sides are going to be pretty evenly matched. Adelaide, be bringing some momentum into this game as they face the other side of the F3 derby this week. The Mariners won't want another loss as they continue their poor run of form, and will be hopeful to sort of arrest that deficit.
All right, very nice. Let's move on to the first of 4 games on Super Saturday. It is a long list. We're starting off with Wellington Phoenix against MacArthur. Now, the Phoenix, obviously, they're not going to be feeling great after another derby loss. That's 2 from 2 in the first 7 rounds, my bad. And then you have MacArthur, who have really not shown a lot in the past month, Paletti. They started well in the league, of course, winning the Australia Cup as well. But ever since then, form has stalled a little bit. Draws, of course, the crazy one against Brisbane Roar, then the 0-0 against Western United. They scored a lot of goals. They conceded a lot of goals. Then nothing happened out in Tarnia. Do you think somewhere in the middle, perhaps?
I mean, Wellington under Giancarlo Italiano generally don't have a run of poor games. It's always been this sort of one-off blip on the radar. It's with Italiano sides, it's sort of, as I said, this sort of one-off, loss here, draw here. They don't really maintain a poor run of results. And I know we have such a small sample size to work with, given that he's only coached for, what is it now, 13 months maybe, as the Wellington Phoenix coach. So I think I'd expect Wellington to bounce back. MacArthur, it's a tricky one because, as you said, they can score goals in spades, but then they can also just shut up shop. And they don't really seem to have that ability this season at the moment to sort of be like, okay, we're going to score 2 goals and that's it. It's sort of really been one extreme or the other. It's 6-1 against Perth. It's 0-0 against Western United. It's 4-4 against Brisbane. There's sort of no happy 2-1 medium that you would expect, Milos Jovovski to be able to get his side to perform at, and that's really going to be the key this season for MacArthur, is being able to play those 2-1 games, or come out on the right side of those 1-0s. The Sydney FC game aside, which had very extenuating circumstances with red cards and all of that. I have to lean towards Wellington, but it's not a confident lean. I think that MacArthur might get a little bit of fire up their backside. So Wellington just.
I think, Jacob, what surprised me about MacArthur this weekend is that they had Jedru and Jake Holman in the starting lineup. They only played an hour. They substituted around the 61st minute, but those are the players that, weren't there from the out in the previous weeks that you thought, oh, maybe if they were in the team, things would be a little bit different. They were here, and Western United held them to a 0-0 draw. So for me, what I think about Italiano, I think that gives him the edge. I think he's a very good coach. Going back at home, they're going to want to set the record straight. They've only lost to Auckland this year, which no one else has even managed to pinch a point off them. So I still look at Phoenix pretty favourably, and I think they would win this one here.
Yeah, I'm giving it to the Phoenix every day of the week. MacArthur, they couldn't score a goal against Western, which is a bit of a sign of, and that's like you said, with a couple of those key players coming back into the side as well. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. And while Wellington, yes, they lost again. It was a tight win. They didn't play awfully. You did see that. I think Italiano had a good plan. They just didn't quite execute it. We saw with the Costa goal what he was trying to do, and break through the lines. Obviously, Rufus stepping up into the challenge and winning the ball back early was part of that. But it wasn't something that they did well enough throughout the game. And I think that's probably why I didn't get the result against Auckland. So, yeah, I'm with you. I still think that Wellington are a very good side. I don't see it being too much trouble for them. Hopefully they can go on and sort of bounce back a bit from another derby loss. But I think that they're by far the better of the two teams, and I'd be surprised if they didn't get the job done.
All right, Sydney FC versus Western United. For me, Sydney now without our ACL2 commitments, I see them starting to get into this rhythm now. They've got their big boys back, and against a Western team that will have to travel, I see them starting a winning run that will take them into the new year. I'd say by a couple of goals, to be honest, Jacob.
Yeah. As much as Wellington are better over MacArthur, Sydney are doubly so over Western. I think, obviously it's not all doom and gloom for Western, and I do think they're a good sign with a side with signs of promise. But when you're coming up against a Sydney team that doesn't have to have half their mind on Asia, that's going to be a tough fixture for them. And Western probably still their weakest part of their squad is their defensive players, and that's something that Sydney are going to look to exploit, and which they've looked to do all season long. I don't think that Ibasuki really has the profile to make a difference against Sydney either. He's like, we know that Sydney's biggest vulnerability is on the break, and Ibasuki doesn't have the pace to really be an impact there. Very good hold up player, so perhaps could work the ball out to Wallity early or something like that, and that's how they do it. But I don't think that it will be a consistent enough threat. So yeah, Sydney should get this handily, and like you said, by a couple of goals too.
I agree with you, Jacob, that Western have a lot of potential, Paletti, but I just think that just the strength of Sydney FC will be quite overbearing here.
I think it will as well. But I mean, John Aloisi was... I haven't had a chance to listen to his post-game press conference from MacArthur, but I think back to the one after the loss to Melbourne victory, there's still got to be a lot of fire there that he's going to have to try and bring out midweek. Sydney, certainly a competitive side. I don't know. I think the fact that they've sort of been playing every 3 days to start the season, right? Bar like this last week and a half for Sydney FC, where it's sort of like, okay, they had the bye, they had the week between Asian games and the trip up to Gosford, but it's very much been, we're playing every 3 days. We don't have time to train. All of this, I just worry that it might get inside their heads a little bit, that they actually have a little bit of time now, and it might go against them. But also, when in doubt, take the home side. So much like Wellington, I think there's going to be Sydney FC. Mine is going to focus on the A-League men crowds for both games. So the Wanderers so far have had 7,244 and 6,220 respectively, not including the Sydney Derby. Sydney FC have only played one game at home, which was the MacArthur game, 12,194, not including the Unite Round Sydney Derby. So my prediction is that the announced crowd figures for the A-League men's fixtures will have a difference of less than 4,500 between the two of them. I like the Saturday night time slot for the Wanderers. I think this could be a bounce-back fixture. Late Saturday afternoon for Sydney FC, I think they might draw a decent crowd. But because of the disparity in the numbers so far, I'm not confident to go in a slightly shorter number.
So less than 4,500.
Will be the difference between the two crowd numbers announced. So 14,500, 10,000, that sort of.
I should have known they would go with an attendance thing after the discussions we had in the group chat today.
Oh my god, that was driving me crazy.
And it was just like this. Lockie, it was like you were talking to a brick wall in the way that Paletti was just flat out. No, derbies don't count. They don't count to attendance figures. And then to make that point even more clear when they're referencing it here, we should have known that they were going to make an attendance-based prediction.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. All right, yeah, nice. I don't mind switching up a little bit, a bit of variation. Let's go to Wanderers to Brisbane. Look, my head is telling me Western Sydney, but my heart is roaring like a lion for the Brisbane Roar. My heart, yeah, maybe it does.
Brisbane are not going to get a result here. Come on.
The thing I'm drawing to is that the Wanderers are just such a chaotic team where how rare is it for them to win 2 games in a row? And right, they're coming off the bye, a little bit of a break. Brisbane, they just have to get a win some point. They have to, bloody.
I think the question that you need to be asking here is not so much about what your head or your heart is telling you. Is Juan Mata going to start? Because if Mata starts, you could put the house on the Wanderers. If he doesn't start, you could probably put the house on Brisbane.
That's not true.
It would be hilarious if he doesn't start and the Wanderers win 4-0 now.
Yeah. Well, the week that Kalfala came out and made those comments, they just like earned a 4-1 win or something against the Jets. So it's like,
I don't know. I think that Brisbane are showing positive progress. I just don't know if it's enough. I mean, it's a tough road trip. I've got to say. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say it's going to be a high-scoring draw.
Jacob?
Fair enough. I'm giving it to the Wanderers. I think perhaps it's a mental block for Brisbane to get over. They can't seem to quite get results, and they've only got the 1 point on some. They're behind Perth. That has got to be absolutely ruining the players. And I don't know if Zadkovic is the guy to be able to dig them out of this and to get the players fired up or not. Whereas the Wanderers, at least we know that they can get a result. So I'm going with the known quantity over the big old question mark.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I'm going to slot my prediction in here somewhere in the middle of Super Saturday because that is what my prediction is referencing. So I'm going to say over the course of the 4 games, so Wellington against Macarthur all the way down to Perth Jets, there is going to be at least 14 goals, but no more than 2 in the Wellington Macarthur game. So off to a slow start on the 3 o'clock fixture, but then we're going to pick up the pace and get to 14, which is above average. I made sure to do that so you wouldn't come at me.
That feels like a low bar, doesn't it, Jacob?
No.
I don't know. I think if he just said 14 across the set of fixtures, then yes. But I think the qualifier of no more than 2 in that first one gives a degree of difficulty to it. It does
Starting
mean
slow.
Yeah, it does mean that like a half and half one, like if you only get a half of it right, it is probably quite weak because on their own, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with
if
you.
that makes sense. But I think combined, there's a degree of difficulty there. But we can make that argument if it comes off next week anyway. So.
We can. All right. Well, let's use that to spin off into the Perth Glory Newcastle Jets. What were you calling it? The Tank Bowl?
The Tank Bowl.
It's okay. Apparently, I guess that's a reference to something I don't quite understand. Paletti's got a spoon in their mouth, not wooden though, so a nice try, but we'll move along. Look,
I can't talk with a silver spoon in my mouth,
God.
Oh my goodness.
Usually people just tell you to stick that somewhere else, but look, this could be absolute chaos, right? This game, leaky defense against leaky defense, just the quantities just like all over the place. I have no idea what's going to come out of this game. Perth Glory at home, Newcastle Jets. They really haven't put in a good performance apart from the one game where Eli Adams decided to score 2 goals in 5 minutes. Yeah. That's where their only 3 points come from. I'm going to say Perth Glory. They have to win at some point. Everyone has to win at some point. Perth at home against Newcastle surely has to be one of the better opportunities to get a win, Jacob.
Yes, but I have zero faith for them anymore. I want them to be good so badly, and I predicted them to finish 6th. What a foolish decision that was! I hate past Jacob for that. That was such a dumb thing to say. These are like the 2 worst sides in the competition as things stand at this point in time from the performances they've put in. Just uninspired. Bad fundamentals, silly mistakes. I think that whichever way this falls, it's not going to be a case of one team being better than the other. It's going to be a case of one team being less bad than the other, because it's just these 2 sides. There's so much football is played across the season, and so much of what these 2 teams play will be forgotten, I think. And this game, probably no exception now. I think it's going to be sloppy. I think it's going to be poor. You watch it be the best game of the round now that I've said all of this. But I'm gonna say it's actually going to be a draw because I don't think that, while Perth's defense has been terrible, I don't think that the Jets have any sort of firepower to really make a threat. And while similarly, the Jets' defense has been leaky. I think that Perth are quite reliant on Adam Taggart, and if he's having an off day, they're going to struggle to score goals. So he's only really had 1 round this season where he's looked good, and that was against Adelaide. The rest of the time, he's been pretty invisible. I think it might be a case again here, and it could be like a 0-0 draw, I reckon.
Well, speaking of Adam Taggart, I believe that is part of Will's predictions. Let's go to him now.
Having such an uptick in form in the predictions game, I said before, I'll say it again, I'll never learn. So I'm going to go for it again. I'm going to say I want Qual Alu Kual to continue his goal-scoring run and net in his game. I want Barbarouses to score against MacArthur, and I want Taggart to score against the Jets. Look, people will call me crazy, but I don't really listen to the noise. I stick to my guns. And I'm shooting up the ladder, and I expect to be even higher at the end of this round.
So 3 anytime individual goal scorers.
That's not happening.
Oh,
It's not coming off.
Let me work out how
He's
much
going
money
on
I
about,
could get for that.
I've only got 2 points this season. I deserve to be higher. And then he comes out with that. Like, come on.
I think he's counting his chickens a little bit because I know he has a good case later on for some 3 votes, but that is bold. That is very bold.
So bold. I mean, if it comes off, fair play, but my goodness.
Had a little change of heart here. Second guessing myself. I'd like to add on the players to assist as well, possibly to score or assist for all of the players that I mentioned. Just thought I'd make it more realistic. I think I went too gung ho in that one. Anyway, thank you.
Paulie, would you care for a word on Perth Glory and Newcastle?
I would. I am going to agree with you that I think Perth will get the 3 points, but not because of similar reasons. I think this is going to be, I alluded to at the start of this little segment with the silver spoon in my mouth, I think that Robbie Stanton might have lost the dressing room with his comments after the game on the weekend, and I think that this could be the start of an even worse run of form for the Jets. And I know Chris would know a lot more about the owners and the situation, everything that's going on than what I would. I just have to wonder, okay, new owners coming into the club, how much time are they going to give Robbie Stanton? And if they go on a 4-game losing streak, which could very easily be tied back to those comments, and there's reports coming out that he's lost the dressing room.
Yeah, fascinating. We did talk about after Unite round, he gave a very interesting press conference, almost very revealing, I thought, talking about his status at the club and, not knowing how much time he had as head coach. I wonder if there's been some messages behind closed doors there. Yeah, interesting situation to watch. Let's go to the final game of the round, Melbourne City versus Auckland FC. And for me, this is the big litmus test for Melbourne City. They've had 4 wins, all against the bottom 4 of the competition. They got played off the park by Melbourne Victory, and they're extremely uninspiring at home against the Wanderers. So you're up there in 4th, Aurelio Vidmar's side. If you want to prove you can play with the big boys, I'm not saying you have to beat Auckland because obviously their record is so good, but you have to show that you can bring it at home. Someone's traveling across the Tasman to come and play you. You got to put in a solid performance and you got to be competitive. So for me, if they lose this game by more than a couple of goals, I'm willing to call them pretenders, flat track bullies, just beating the bottom of the table over and over again. But if they can, then I think they prove that they deserve to stay in around that top 4 conversation. So fascinating for me. I do pick it very tightly poised. The question around City has been their attacking output, but even with those injuries, Andreas Kuhn to Jonathan Cohen, that combination provided 2 goals and should have had a third. There should have been a hat trick for that exact combination. So if they can get clicking, then I see them being very competitive. I hope they can be, because I think it'll be good for the league, especially with a big Melbourne derby coming up. So I'm going to call a draw on this one, Auckland to drop their first points, but Lady, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say.
I mean, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. This was only the 2nd time that Auckland will have had to travel to play a game in Australia in their short history, correct?
Correct.
There's a big difference historically between having to do so against MacArthur on relatively neutral territory and having to go to a side's actual home ground, lacking in crowd as it may or may not be. It's not neutral territory, it's a proper away day. And that's where I wonder if the idea of your first trip to Australia to an opponent's actual home ground might get a little bit too much. Like, did the derby take a lot out of Wellington, out of Auckland, their game against Wellington? I think it might have been a few give credence to some of the post game comments that were made or allegedly made. It feels like there was a lot of rent being shifted around people's heads in the aftermath of that game. I'm inclined, like I know I said earlier, when in doubt, back the home team, but I think you'd be a fool to go against Auckland until they show that they can lose, and they haven't yet. And they haven't looked like losing yet. So I've got to go with Auckland until they prove otherwise.
No. Call me a fool then, Paletti.
Yeah. That's
Go
what
on,
I've
Jacob.
been doing for a year, and
Yeah.
here we are.
No,
I can't really put anything against Auckland. I don't see them losing to this City side. I do agree with you, Lockie. I think if City wants to prove that they deserve to be a top 4 side, they have to at least take points off of Auckland or put a couple of goals past Auckland, right? Because nobody's even done that. They've only just conceded their first goal all season long, and it was a quick counter-attack in the 83rd minute, right? So they've held on for a long time. They've not conceded multiple goals. Even doing that, if you lose 3-2 but you've put a couple past Auckland, at least you can go, well, look, we're doing what no other side's doing, and I think that's still at least a little bit, but I'm still going to give the edge to Auckland because they look imperious at the moment. And I agree with you, Paletti, until we've seen something from them that suggests that they are still mortal, what's the point in playing pretend and just believing in the fantasy that they could go perfect for the rest of the season? Wouldn't that be a sight to behold, Lockie?
It would be quite something. I don't think they'll quite get there, but it's fun to watch them as they do, of course.
Well, we've never had an invincible side in the A-League. So I think the closest
Sydney FC?
I think the closest we came was Sydney FC, who lost that one derby to the Wanderers in that 16-17 season. And I don't believe Barcelona were ever invincible, even though they had a 30...
They got close because they had 35, 36 games, but across 2 seasons.
Yeah, so I think look, it's early days, but, there's 2 sides left this season that can do it, and they both start with A. And I don't think we're convinced that the one in South Australia is on any sort of trajectory to maintain their current undefeated form. Just saying, it could be a good storyline this season where our third best team is about 30 points behind Auckland, and they're the ones going to be representing us in Asia next year.
That would be quite hilarious. We need to get that sorted out. We need to get either, if you want to get the Kiwi teams into Asia, if you don't want that, get them in Oceania. Just let them play somewhere because Club World Cup, anyway, I could go on for that for hours.
Okay, so my tip this round, going for 3 games. So the Mariners, Adelaide, Wanderers v Brisbane, and the Glory v Jets. All those 3 games, both teams to score. So hopefully it gets the job done. Fingers crossed.
But there is our preview for round 8. Don't go anywhere. We still need to hand out the votes for the predictions for last week. Although I think we can wrap this one up pretty quickly, can we not? We've got Jacob, you and Christian faltered in yours. Paletti, you have, a little bit of credit somewhere, scores level in at least one of the simultaneous games. I do find it funny how I misread the fixtures and thought they were being played at the same time, but they weren't, but then it got rescheduled, so they were. Yeah. So if they were played at their normal times, you wouldn't have actually got anything correct. But because of the rescheduled, you had 14 minutes at the start of Saturday with the 0-0 at the same time. So extreme levels of low bar here, but you got something unlike Jacob and Christian. So I'm putting you in for the 1 vote. And then I did try and rile Will up about this beforehand, but he clears me by a mile for 3 votes and me for 2. So unless there are any strong objections, I think we can leave it at that.
Other than just, it would be funny to give Paletti more votes for something completely out of everybody's control. But no, I can't be too mad at giving Will the 3. I mean, he does, he's gone for one of those combo ones and he's got it right. So, he deserves to at least, we've said if he gets it right, then he'll get the 3 points, and he's not managed to do it so far this season. So it's finally come off for him. So, he deserves it.
Yeah, so we're in agreement. Will 3, Paletti 2, Lucky 1.
No,
look,
that's
I
tactic,
think I would have a case for 2 points if they had have been level beyond the 0-0. at any point.
Maybe,
and
yeah.
And I was frantically checking the A-Leagues app to see if there was going to be any sort of crossover at any point.
Or for the length of was it 60 minutes or whatever the original difference was supposed to be between
so
the
it
two
would have been
kickoffs.
half time. Like
So
had
if
they
it had
stayed
been-
0-0 at half time, then
then
I
you could
might
go,
have had
well,
a
it would have
shout
been
at any point.
yes.
But sadly, I did not. So yeah, I think I have to measly accept my 1 point, and I will be grateful for it.
Wow, very peaceful. All right, well done. Well, I think the good thing about that is it's evened up our standings a fair bit as well. So Jacob and Christian, who were leading the race, went dead this week. So it's Jacob is still in the lead on 10, then myself and Christian on 9, and Paletti and Will on 7. So Will's really come up the last 3 weeks, 3 scores in a row. Congratulations.
He's not getting one next week.
Probably not. No, he's let himself down there. Perhaps we never know. We never know. This is a crazy league. But there are your standings at the moment. It's setting things up nicely. Almost a third through the season. We're all very even.
There's not been a Christian this year, which is the good thing, right?
No, there's not been a Christian.
And it kept everybody honest. So
I like it, especially with 3 of the 5 of us polling votes every week. Like you can play the different levels of safety, but then getting 1 vote, you got to get 3. So fascinating. It's going to be good. We will see you next week to preview round 9 of the A-League men's competition. We'll see you then.